News Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge joins me. Good evening, Catherine.
Well, thank you for having me, Judge.
It's good to have you on again. Catherine, a lot going on tonight. Talk of some kind of agreement between the White House and Iran on the proliferation of nuclear weapons, or the agreement to not proliferate. And the White House apparently coming out just a few moments ago and saying that it's not true. What can you tell us?
Well, that's right. The story first reported in the New York Times, based on our reporting, the White House seeming to knock it down. But I think you have to ask yourself, Judge, about the timing here. This story surfacing just 2 days before the final presidential debate on foreign policy, and Iran giving us some division between the two candidates. I would also ask whether, even if this was the case, that the U.S. had agreed to one-on-one talks with Iran, whether it would really be a double-edged sword for the administration, because many Americans see any kind of dealings with Iran as a sign of weakness and also of naivete, Judge.
Well, and interestingly enough, now, here we are just approaching the third debate, and we know that last week, right before the debate, Hillary Clinton comes out and takes one for the team. There are people who are suspecting that maybe this was a balloon, a trial balloon, to test whether or not that would be received positively by the American people.
Well, what we've seen in the last couple of weeks, as you showed in your intro, is that there have been a series of people within the administration taking responsibility for what happened in Libya. But they're not answering a critical question, and we touched upon this on your show last week, which is whether these attacks, there was intelligence that there was a high threat level, and whether we seem to brush that threat aside because we had such a significant intelligence present there in Benghazi. So, if you will, we had a good presence. We felt somewhat insulated from the threat, but then ultimately these people turned against us and attacked the consulate as well as the annex, Judge.
All right. Now, switching just for a moment, Catherine, I hear that there is a growing movement to try to protect Ambassador Rice, who went out on those Sunday talk shows and repeated the lie of the White House that this was a response to a video. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because I think it's very significant. In the last hour, I got this statement from the head of the House Intelligence Committee, Republican Congressman Mike Rogers. And what he alleges in that statement is that he does believe that there is a concerted campaign by people within the administration with specific leaks to the media to try and bolster the statements of people like Ambassador Susan Rice. So what we have here is the head of the Intelligence Committee saying, we think this White House is now leaking information, intelligence, if you will, to back up the statements of Ambassador Rice. And what he also goes on to say is that, on the one hand, if they're leaking information to try and bolster their position that her statement wasn't way out of line, what they're not releasing is the other intelligence that really undercut this idea in a very significant way, that this YouTube video had anything to do with the demonstrations. And the bottom line from my reporting is that here we are, more than a month later, arguing over when we decided to call it terrorism publicly by this administration, and we just haven't, in a simple phrase, dropped the hammer on the people who are responsible. And that emboldens these people. That emboldens them to attack the United States.
All right, Catherine, thanks.